Hi, welcome to Talking TV on LATimes.com. My name is Patrick Day. I'm here with Alicia Banks and our social media editor, Stacy Leska, Skyping in from Rhode Island. And last night was the season finale of Game of Thrones, and it was a jam-packed hour, over an hour of television. So, Alicia, your first impressions, was it everything that you hoped for all season?
It was some very surprising deaths. I don't think we've ever had, four, at least, like, major characters die in a matter of 66 minutes. But
right, well, the opening credits went on for longer than I think any episode this season to fit all the names in. So I think they had to do some necessary pairing just so that the opening credits could be a standard length.
But
I would imagine.
But I found it to be a very solid episode. Enough violence and just enough drama, especially. I'm pretty sure we're going to get to Tyrion and Tywin at some point in time in the conversation. But right. I was very satisfied.
Right. Stacy, were you particularly distraught over any of the deaths? Or did you see them all coming?
I don't necessarily know if I saw them all coming, but I will say I'm home in Rhode Island. I flew all the way home just so I could watch Game of Thrones on East Coast time. But I'm home and I was watching with my sister, and when Brianna was fighting the Hound, I was kind of like, I don't know who I want to root for to win right now, because you weirdly like the Hound at some points, and you like that he's sort of softening and taking care of Ariana, and it's just. I was a little surprised at that one, but in the end, I'm glad he was offed.
Right. Well, so that brings us to the final moments of that scene where we have the Hound who's been mortally wounded from his battle with Brienne, and he's literally begging Arya to put him out of his misery and kill him, and she chooses to take his money and leave him there to die. Some people said that was too cold for Arya, and that they felt like she needed to do the right thing.
Oh no, I don't think it was too cold at all. Her taking his money and leaving reminds me of what he did to the farmer a few episodes back, where the Hound considered him to be weak, and so only thing he had to offer was his money, so he took it and kept it moving. So it's almost kind of like a poetic justice in a sense. And I don't think it's too cold. As we've seen, characters have to get dark. They have to go to those places that we wouldn't expect them to, because at the end of the day, you play the Game of Thrones, either you live or you die, and you have to worry about yourself.
Yeah, one of the things Arya said to the Hound when he said that she wouldn't last very long on her own, and she said, "I'll last longer than you." What do you think it is about Arya that made us believe that? Do you think that she will live longer than the Hound on her own in this brutal world?
I mean, I think so. Look at her; she's outlived the rest of the Starks. She's killing it. I mean, it's so funny because you're like, oh, what a little psychopath, but then you're like, good for you. You get yours. You murder all those people that hurt you and throughout your young little life. I mean, I think a lot of people forget that, even her sister and all these characters are supposed to be like 9 years old. Her sister's 13, so it's like this little 9-year-old, and Needle are off, for vengeance across all of Westeros. So I think she'll outlast them all.
Right, and now she's traveling across. She was the final shot of the episode. She's traveling across the Narrow Sea to go train in Bravos with the assassins. I think she's going to come back and wipe the rest of the cast out next season.
I'm totally fine with that. I'm all for Team Arya.
Right. So, so many storylines were touched on last night. It really felt like they almost needed another hour to hit on everything that they worked into that episode. I mean, was there anything that you felt got short shrift in the episode that you wanted to see a little bit more of?
God, that's a good question.
I have a good one. You know what I did want to see more of? The full murder of Shay. I feel like that was very quick.
Yeah.
And I think it deserved a little more bloodbath, because she deserved it.
Yeah, didn't you want to see a little bit more
conversation? I wanted some dialogue between them before it got to, I'm going to whip your chain around and strangle you to death.
Yeah, that's what I agree. I would have liked to have seen a final dialogue or conversation similar to the way that Tyrion and Tywin had a final conversation before Tywin got a couple arrows stuck in his chest.
Exactly. At least with Shay and Tyrion, I probably would have wanted for them to talk just about, could he get out of her, were your feelings ever real for me? Or were you just doing this just to save yourself?
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked to have seen, how Tywin and Shay even got to the point where, they are with each other, however you want to call it.
Right. Don't you think there was a little bit of self-preservation on her part? Like, it was either, I think, be executed or sleep with Tywin. I think that was probably her options. So.
But still, you don't do that to Tyrion.
Right.
You just don't do that to a fan favorite.
Yeah.
So I'm behind him all the way. It was sad though, because
I actually interviewed the actress Sybil Kikili last week to talk about her leaving the show, and she said that the one keepsake that she kept from being on Game of Thrones was the necklace that Tyrion did use to strangle her. So she says she keeps it in a drawer at home now.
But Patrick, you read all the books too, right? I mean, wasn't that death scene a little more filled out?
Yeah, my memory of it is that there was a little bit more conversation between Tyrion and Shay before he ended up doing the deed. So
I know his face just broke. It was poor Tyrion. He can't catch a break.
Yeah, but so Tywin, a lot of people made note of the fact that this episode aired on Father's Day, and
the memes have started. I've seen so many Happy Father's Day memes of Tywin and Tyrion. It was hilarious.
Right. I mean, for people who haven't seen the episode, Tyrion finally confronts his dad, who had passed judgment on him to be executed the next day. He finds his dad sitting on the toilet, and he has a final conversation with him. Tywin says the wrong thing to Tyrion about his girlfriends, and
one too many times.
Tyrion pumps him full of arrows. Do you think that the series will be able to recover from, Charles Dance was such a great villain and such a great character? Do you think that they've sufficiently replaced Tywin with other hissable villains?
Yes. I mean, they always, time and time again, they do. It's so funny. I was also, again, it's Leska's sister bonding time during Game of Thrones deaths. But we were talking about how the show continues to build up both people you love and people you hate in this amazing flow that, you're kind of like, oh no, like, oh, I love this guy. Oh my gosh, he's murdered. Now I'm never going to watch the show again because I'm never going to have another favorite character. And then someone else comes up and you're like, oh, I love them now. Like, wait until they die. And the same thing with villains. After Joffrey, I was very afraid for the rest of the season. But you still find these people to love to hate.
Right. Yeah, I think that next season we're probably going to see a lot more of Roose Bolton and his son, Ramsay.
Oh, Ramsay's a piece of work. He's entertainment, but he is a piece of work.
Right.
I've enjoyed watching him a lot.
Right. Yeah. So let's touch briefly on one of the most exciting scenes from last night, which was the battle with the skeleton warriors in the snow. That had to have been one of the most difficult things that they've produced on the series, with the skeletons popping up out of the snow, attacking Bran and Hodor and the Reeds.
I screamed.
Did you scream?
I did, because I wasn't expecting to see a skeletal hand reach out and grab Joe, and I was like, wait, what is that? I wasn't ready.
Right, and they seemed like they threw a lot at the viewer in just a few minutes in that scene. First of all, you have skeletons popping up out of the snow to fight. They race into the cave after the Reeds and Bran, and they're blown apart by some magical force field. And then you get this little girl who calls herself the Children, which you called, by the way, last week, that you said that the title of the episode, The Children, was going to be about these children.
I was expecting to see more children, not just one little cute girl, kind of dirty, but walking around. I guess I would want to know, even though if that's, their weirwood tree, why are these skeletons around that land or in that area? I mean, can you speak to that being a book reader?
No, I'm not sure exactly why all the skeletons, or at least I can't remember why they were all lying there. But no, it didn't seem like the place that Bran and his friends had finally arrived at was the most welcoming, safe haven for them, being that there were all these bones lying around on the ground. Stacey, what did you make of the guy tangled up in the roots?
You know, that whole scene was a little, for me, that almost went too fantasy for me. You know, it's odd to say that I like the show's realism, but there's, you know, it's kind of like all of a sudden there's fireballs added and mystical little nymph children. But, you know, it's so funny because it's kind of, I almost feel like because Game of Thrones does a great job of kind of slowly adding these things in, you know, like the dragons came after over a couple of seasons. But when you throw that much fantasy, sometimes it's a lot to handle. But, you know, I think I'm excited for him to finally reach the tree and, you know, at least be at the end of his journey, even though he lost a couple friends along the way. Mm-hmm. Plus, Hodor did a great job of protecting.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm all for it when Bran works in the Hodor. It's like the best thing. Like, he uses his strength to the absolute max.
Yeah.
I love when Hodor gets some action in.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be an interesting thing, you know, to date with the series. The fantasy elements have been confined to certain storylines. So we're used to seeing Jon Snow and the White Walkers. Mm-hmm. We're used to seeing Daenerys and the dragons, but we're not used to seeing other characters interacting with these elements. So now we have Stannis and Melisandre up in the north. So pretty soon you'll probably see Stannis and Melisandre and White Walkers. Is that going to be a little bit disorienting to see these new characters in situations that we've become familiar with over 3 seasons?
For me, no. I'd like to see how they would handle it. And just even taking a step back, I like how these things that we've been talking about since season 1, even with Old Nan, when she was telling Bran, you know, about, you know, the children, and, you know, we've heard about White Walkers, and, like, we're finally kind of get to see them in action, you know, after so many seasons of just hearing about them and people saying they've been gone for thousands of years, they're never going to come back. And George R.R. Martin and the writing directors remind us, no, magic will always be here.
Right.
Well, first, I'd also like to show off that I'm wearing a Baratheon t-shirt because they are, in fact, the true kings. But, you know, I think for me, though, I also was confused with the skeletons because are they White Walkers? They're different than that, right?
Well, I think they're related to the White Walkers. I mean, they've been, you know, rotting for a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
That was my impression.
Their flesh is now gone and no longer have the beautiful steely blue eyes.
Right, right. They've been up there for a much, much longer. Now, I'm sure when we get to, you know, season 9 of The Walking Dead, we'll probably see some skeletons running around as well.
I can't even believe that this season's already over, and I don't even know what I'm going to do with my Game of Thrones withdrawal. I really don't.
So Stacey, seeing Stannis show up to save the day north of the Wall, you must have been thrilled since you are Team Baratheon.
Well, I'm only Team Baratheon because I'm such a huge Team Stark. So obviously, you know, when Jon Snow is like, my father fought for you, you know, it's like the best. It's like you kind of almost forget that too. You're like, oh yeah, 4 seasons ago he did die for him, you know, and that the whole weave of characters is just so ridiculously huge that when they say that and bring it back to that, you know, you kind of remember that as much as he's kind of a weirdo, especially with, you know, his wife and the red lady.
Right.
That it really is like, oh, you are supposed to be the king. You know, you are supposed to be the real king.
Yeah. So the red lady did show up for a brief moment, had no lines last night, and we saw her looking at, you know, making eyes at Jon Snow across the burning bodies of his Night's Watch companions. Alicia, you had an interesting theory about Melisandre and why she is making those eyes at Jon Snow.
Yes, and this is not a book spoiler from my understanding, but just from reading the first book and the second one, The Clash of Kings, and all the speculation about who Jon's real parents are. Some people think that he could be heir to the throne, that he has some royal blood in him, and the way she looked at him definitely reminded me of how she looked at Gendry last season when she took his blood with the leeches and threw them in the fire and, you know, called out all of these claimants to the throne are going to die. I mean, we saw Robb Stark die in the Red Wedding. We saw Joffrey die at the Purple Wedding. So it makes you wonder, does Jon have something in him that hasn't been touched on yet just because of how she looked? But I'm going to need her to stay away. Right. Jon does not need to go anywhere. I don't need her doing anything to him. Keep your distance. So that's kind of my theory behind it. Will we find out why she was looking at him that way?
Right.
And exactly how soon?
Right. So, Stacey, you know, this is the last Game of Thrones until 2015. How do you?
Oh, why?
Have you decided how you're going to spend your time until next spring?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I've already binge watched Orange is the New Black. You know what though? I'm actually really excited for HBO's new show, The Leftovers. I've heard really good things about that, so I'm excited for that one. And then I don't know. I gotta find some new summer television. Oh well, Under the Dome. I'm a huge fan of that show, of that miniseries. So I'm glad they're doing a second season of it. So that's probably how I'll spend at least this summer.
Mm-hmm. And Alicia, you're reading the books, so are you going to try to power through the last two?
Yes, I need to. I'm currently halfway through A Storm of Swords, so I still have A Feast for Crows and then A Dance with Dragons to finish as well. And this will give me time to catch up on a few shows that I haven't had to, such as I'm currently watching Orange is the New Black, so I'm like halfway through the second season, and I'm waiting for White Collar to come back on USA.
Are there dragons in either of those shows?
No, they're not. No dragons.
Then they can't hold a candle to Game of Thrones. Well, Alicia, Stacey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you can get all of our TV coverage at LATimes.com.